My involvement with oh gosh, food shelves and food banks and feeding people is really quite a surprise. It started out with actually living in a small town like Westbrook, Minnesota, a town of 750 people. We're talking about just farm families, people who have lived here forever. I mean, it's like any small town, you got a handful of names, and if you're not one of those names, then you probably came here from somewhere else. Well, as I started getting to know myself around this town and getting to know the people in the town, it came to light that we had issues with people needing food. And by getting that food, they didn't have the transportation so that they could, find a food shelf. Well, at the time, we did not have a food shelf in Westbrook, Minnesota. So if there was a needy family out there, they were having to figure out, how am I going to get to a food shelf that's 35 miles away? So I went down to our community center, and there was probably 25 to 30 people from the community who attended this meeting. And the issue that drove this was people needing food didn't have transportation. That was determined by volunteer drivers who were working for an organization, Western Community Action, who were taking these people to Windham, Minnesota, to get their food. Well, it was costing money. It was either costing the individual to get that ride, or if they couldn't afford the ride, somehow that ride was being paid for through Western Community Action. So a few people got together and said, let's see about doing a food shelf here. We decided we were going to do this. We're going to build a food shelf. Well, somebody had to be in charge. Well, I'm a retired naval officer, so I had a lot of years of experience in leading things and getting people to do things they necessarily didn't want to do. So I took on the task, and I said, yep, I'm the guy. I don't mind giving orders. I can tell people what to do. We'll get the food shelf built. Well, here's the really beautiful thing about this whole deal. Our Economic Development Authority bought a building, in the building I'm sitting in right now. They purchased this building, and they put money into the building to remodel it, make it usable. This was a building that sat vacant for 18 years on Main Street in a small town. And as we all know, the small towns are starting to disappear from the landscape. Well, it was an opportunity to save a building on Main Street and try to keep some of that life going in a small town. So they bought a building. They remodeled the building. I went to a city council meeting, and this is how things can be done in the small rural parts of a state. The keys to the building were slid across that big fake mahogany table, and I had the keys in my hand, and we now had a food shelf. All we needed to do was provide shelving, find refrigerators, find freezers, figure out how we were going to get food. I mean, the list went on and on and on, because when it comes to building a food shelf in order to feed the hungry, there is no book. There is no plan. There's nothing you can go to and follow it step by step in order to provide that type of a service to a community. So we did a lot of trial and error. We did a lot of, lots of meetings, and just lots of really crazy ideas on how we could do something. I had two older gentlemen, and they're kind of like what I call the old school carpenters who came in. And we took old wood shelving and old built-in furniture and stuff, and took stuff apart and recycled the wood. And the shelves that are behind me were all handmade shelves that were made out of wood that we recycled. We had two guys who actually set up a carpenter shop in the back room. So we built this place with as little money as we needed to. And once we opened up our doors in December of 2009. So it really only took us about 4.5 months to really get this place up and running. But you know, opening a door is not the only thing you have to do. When we opened that door, we had to find people that needed us, and we had to find donors that we needed. And that's the most dynamic thing about serving the needy, is getting them to come forward so that you can provide to them. But more importantly, you need those donors out there who will give you the money, the groceries, the produce, whatever, so that you can serve these people. And in any small town, that's going to be a tough situation to deal with, because you're having to sell this new idea. In the beginning, it was kind of looked at as, well, they're just giving food away. And yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. We're just giving food away. But there was some 17-year-old kid, and I don't even know who this kid is, and it was a quote that they made in some publication that I had read one time, that said, if all you ever think about is being hungry, then you probably won't think about anything else. And it's wonderful that when the young people say these stupid things to us, that these things can be so profound in their background. And it's kind of an approach that we can take here at Mary and Martha's Pantry, is if everybody that is hungry gets fed so they're not hungry, maybe they can start thinking about doing other things for themselves. And what we have done here is we've tried to go beyond the food. We've tried to keep people warm at night by providing quilts that ladies in the community make for us. We try to be a clearinghouse here of information. We work with the Family Services Agency down in Windham, our county agency, to get brochures and to get information from them. We try to show people that food stamps are available, and here's the forms you need to do, and here's who you need to see. We try to help our seniors with the commodities type foods, so that once a month they can get their box of food. We also try to look at the WIC program for the women with infant children, and try to get people into the WIC program to make sure that the mother and the child, and of course the father and the brothers and sisters maybe, are all going to eat healthier. Now, we've also gone to another step in our evolution here, and that is we're opening up a self-help legal center where we actually have some attorneys who have signed up to do pro bono work for people. We've attempted to provide job placement for people by coordinating with, let's say, area farmers or area businesses who might need some temporary labor or maybe even a long-term job. And they can come here, and by letting us know that there's this availability out there, maybe I can take a family that is struggling, who is out of work, and I can put them in touch with somebody that's willing to hire them for a while. And now we've got a family getting a job. We got a family earning money on their own. And what's kind of neat is when that happens, we don't see those people in the food shelf anymore. I mean, they disappear because they're out there, they're taking care of themselves, and they're doing it on their own. It's very difficult in southwest Minnesota to find that so-called 40-hour job. I mean, you hear about them in the cities, and I'm not picking on the cities, but you have so many businesses in the cities, and you have so many people that work the traditional 40-hour work week, and they make pretty good money. Well, out here in the rural area, you don't have all these businesses, and you don't have all these 40-hour jobs. So you have a lot of people that when they are working, they might be working 2 jobs. They got a 20-hour job here and a 20-hour job there. So when you walk around town, it's almost like, does anybody work around here? Well, yeah, they work, but their 8-hour workday goes around the clock. And they get a few hours in the morning, and they might get a few hours in the evening. And because of that, you're going to have, what I think you're going to have is the increased poverty levels in this area. And the nice thing about living here is you don't need as much money to live as you might in the city. And I can use myself as an example. If I stay home, I don't spend much money. If I stay in Westbrook, I don't spend much money. But when I go 100 miles away and I go to a big town and I have a mall and I have nice restaurants and I have nice places to go, then you tend to spend the money. So you can live in these rural areas and you can live quite comfortably on less of an income. But with the people who are making that money, that's just a small part of it. Because you have another small part, which is the people who aren't working, who can't find a job. So you have those kind of people that are probably going to get some type of assistance. And that assistance could be a government assistance, it could be a civic type assistance, but you're going to have these people that are on assistance. And you're going to have those people that are taking care of everything on their own. And in between those two groups of people, and these are the people that we really need to remember that they're out there, are the people that make just enough money that they cannot get any type of assistance. They can't get food stamps. They can't get energy assistance. They can't get min care for their insurance. And they're not under any type of social services assistance whatsoever. And this is because maybe they make $10 too much in a month. Well, those people who are living on the edge have no place to go when times get tough for them. And in this county here, Cottonwood County, we have, it's roughly, about 11%. It's like 10.3% of the people in Cottonwood County are in this category where they make too much money to get any type of assistance, but not enough money to live comfortably or to put a meal on the table 3 times a day for their family. You know, in a perfect world, we would have to say 90 meals for 30 days for each person. Now that's the perfect world. That means we're having breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. Well, imagine if you're not getting that. And I'm not talking about where, well, I'm busy today, I think I'll skip lunch. Or, well, I had a big lunch, so I'm going to skip supper. Or more importantly, how many of us just don't have time to eat breakfast because we can sleep in another half an hour or something. And I'm not talking about missing those kind of meals. Is think about children and then think about senior citizens. What if, and it's the big what if, they are hungry and when they sit down at the table, there is no food for them to have that meal. And that's something we should all think about. We should think about what it would be like if I were hungry and when everyone else was sitting down for lunch, I had no lunch to go to. And especially with our children. And if our children aren't eating, then we're going to have these other problems in later life, because without the proper nutrition, the child's body doesn't develop properly, the internal organs don't develop, the brain doesn't develop. I mean, we're going into the game already behind the curve, so to speak, because we're not getting the proper nutrition. Our schools do lunch programs. Some of our schools do breakfast programs. Many of our children take advantage of that breakfast and that lunch every single day. But imagine if that was the only meal they got. What happens when they get out of school and they go home and there's no meal there? Food shelf is still there as that small stopgap measure to provide food to that family. Because if that family can't get their food, they need to get it from somewhere. When you walk in this door into a food shelf, we would love to be able to take every needy family and not only put food in their stomachs, but provide them with information to live a better life, with a way to improve their life, and more importantly, to improve the community that they live in. And that's help the people who are in need in their community. We have to work. That means we have to volunteer. That means we have to put our community first, and we have to do something in our community. Now, many of us, as we reach the 50s and the 60s, we're a part of something. We might be in a Kiwanis organization or a Lions Club, or we belong to a church men's group or a church women's group or something, and we're always doing some type of service in our community. Well, that's all fine, that's well and good for that 50 to 60-year-old and the 70 and the 80-year-olds. But there's something really happening in our culture today. Because you need to start looking at the 40-year-olds and the 30-year-olds and the 20-year-olds. They're so busy, they're not doing service anymore. You don't see as much service with the youth or the younger people as we used to. And that is something that I think in a community, if we don't stop that slide going backwards, that we're going to find out that someday there is nobody to head up a Kiwanis group and to take care of the needs of the children of the world. That there won't be a Lions group or an Optimist group or one of these other civic organizations. So when we do service in our community, it's very important that we start getting the younger people involved. Because we need them. They are the future of our community, they're the future of our states, and they're the future of our country. So we all struggle in rural southwest Minnesota with how do we keep our town alive, how do we keep it vibrant, how do we provide a place for our children, and more importantly, what can we do to get our children to come back when they leave to get their education. So how do we get our kids to come back? The only way you can get the kids to come back is you have to provide them with an environment that they can raise their family in. And in order to raise their family, they need to be able to earn a living. And you cannot earn a living when the only job available is a gas station or a part-time job or seasonal work. So until we can somehow provide jobs in the rural part of America, we're not going to be able to get these kids to come back. People who come into a food shelf. Just because I give them food, my real goal is to cure the hunger thing with them so that they can move on to other things. And I think it's very important to note that not everybody that uses a food shelf is scamming. Not everybody who uses a food shelf is just trying to put an empty hand out there so that it can be filled. The majority of the people who are using food shelves are people who really need the help. So if we bring our children back, it's sad if a child comes back with a college education and they have nothing to do with that education. No place to go with it. And then all they have to look forward to is coming here and, I can always get food at the food shelf. And that's not what we wanted. That's not our desire in this country.